It is October 5th, 2024, and you are listening to Sports Chowder with me, Sam Stebbins. Today I am recapping Patriots 49ers, I am previewing Patriots Dolphins, I am talking about some interesting Celtics stories, I will quickly recap the end of the Red Sox season, and more. Last Sunday, the Patriots lost in ugly fashion to the 49ers. The final score was 30-13. Now, to be clear, I did not watch the entire game. I was at a music festival in my town. Thankfully, the weather did not force the organizers to cancel. They had a tented area called the Beer Hall with two TVs that were airing the Red Zone network. So through that tent, through those TVs, I saw some of the offensive action from our game against the 49ers. For the most part, it was pretty ugly. I didn't really enjoy watching it, but I had some downtime at the festival, and I thought I better sit down and see some of this, see how it's going, and for the most part, it was not going well, unfortunately, but that night I saw Noah Khan perform, and he definitely cheered me up, so at least my day ended well. That was not the case for the Patriots. The first on-field lowlight that comes to mind is that Ramondre Stevenson fumbled once again in the first half. I will have more on that later in the show. Now, as for our defense, just as they struggled to contain Aaron Rodgers week 3, they really struggled to contain Brock Purdy last Sunday. And ultimately, we cannot slow them down. They put up 30 points, of course. That was really disappointing. Jacoby Brissett was sacked 6 times, which is the most he's been sacked all year. And he threw his first interception of the year, a pick 6 to Fred Warner. Now, thankfully, I did not have to watch that live, but seeing it later on social media hurt just about as much. Now, up until this point, I would consider Jacoby Brissett a break-even kind of quarterback. He had avoided big mistakes, but he also had a hard time leading successful drives. If we had better receivers or a more offensive-minded head coach, he might be just enough to win games. Nothing special, nothing great on his part, but enough to win, enough to stay competitive. But unfortunately, our offense is not in that place. A break-even quarterback or a placeholder quarterback, 2 terms I would apply to Jacoby, is not enough for our team. As for our offensive line, things got even bleaker. Center David Andrews left with a shoulder injury, and this week it was announced by the team that he would be undergoing a season-ending surgery. So we've lost a veteran leader on our offensive line, which is a real bummer. When the offensive line is doing this poorly, you need leaders to provide stability. The final low light I will share is that Demario Douglas attempted a lateral pass to Ramondre Stevenson, but Tyquan Thornton was whistled for a block in the back, and the Patriots were forced to punt. I watched that live. It was the most exciting offensive moment of the game, and of course it had to be overturned. I will end this recap with 2 bright spots. Kicker Joey Sly set a franchise record with a 63-yard field goal, and Jabril Peppers picked off Brock Purdy. Now back to Ramondre Stevenson and his fumbling habit. This week, Coach Mayo made it clear he is on the verge of being benched. He said, quote, "That's definitely under consideration. I've had multiple conversations with Ramondre. We can't preach that ball security is job security and still have him out there the majority of the time." Unquote. I hope Coach Mayo is being completely honest here. As much as I love Ramondre Stevenson, as much as that love goes back a few years, I can't watch him fumble the ball week after week and still desire to see him on the field. There has to be some kind of consequence for turnovers like that. I believe that Ramondre Stevenson wants to win. I know he's not doing this on purpose, but you can't keep failing at your job and expect to keep that job. Having him stay on the bench for a little bit, learn his lesson, and get better is the way to go. I want him to have a redemption arc this season, I'm fine with a rough start, some time on the bench, and then hopefully having him back out in the field, being a leader, making offense happen. And it pains me to say that, After the first couple of games when he fumbled, I was like, what happens. It's a rough start to the season, but after 4 weeks of that, you can't brush it off. Consequences are necessary. Now, I'm still rooting for Ramondre Stevenson. He's done awesome things for the Patriots in the past, and I believe he will in the future. It's just a rough patch. Many players have one. I believe he can come back and be his usual self once again. And now a Week 5 preview. The Miami Dolphins are also 1-3, and they also have a very weak offense. According to some articles I read, when the Patriots run or pass, the Dolphins have the advantage, and when the Dolphins run or pass, the Patriots have the advantage. So it's more of a defensive battle this week. For a shot at winning our second game of the year, our ground game needs to bounce back in a major way. And it really is a good opportunity for that to happen. I do think this is a make-or-break game for Ramondre Stevenson. He obviously cannot fumble the ball, and he needs to contribute again, Whether that's scoring a touchdown or just moving the ball, he needs to do something, and he cannot be a detriment to our offense anymore. Without Drake May at quarterback, our passing game can only do so much. I don't see Jacoby Brissett putting on a fireworks show this week. He has not come close to that thus far this season. I don't see why this week would be any different. So while I'm not expecting much from our quarterback, Miami is also lacking their starter. As you may know, Tua Tagovailoa was placed on Miami's injured reserve list Week 2 after suffering a concussion. The Dolphins have already gone through a couple of replacement quarterbacks, but as of right now, they will be starting Tyler Huntley. So because of Miami's struggles and their lack of Tua, I do think this will be a nice opportunity for our defense to possibly have a strong game. We should be expecting some long shot passes downfield, as the Dolphins will have a hard time sustaining drives with short passes. I really think we have a decent shot at winning if we can get back to how we looked Week 1 and to a lesser extent Week 2. It's been a rough couple of weeks. I do think if everyone stays focused and does their job, we can win. I would say right now I am mildly optimistic. The game is at 12 p.m. Central Time on Fox, and fun fact, Tom Brady was supposed to be the commentator on this game, but because both the Patriots and Dolphins are doing so poorly, they moved him to the 49ers-Cardinals game. I can't say I blame Fox. He is their number one commentator right now, even though he is still learning the ropes of NFL broadcasting. You don't want to waste him on a game like this. So I hope sooner rather than later we get to see Tom Brady in the TV booth in Foxborough, but this week is not that time. Moving on to the NBA, the Celtics began their preseason yesterday in Abu Dhabi, defeating the Denver Nuggets 107-103. Now, it being the preseason and all, our starters did not play that much, but our bench got some valuable experience, and that's always a good thing. Peyton Pritchard finished with 21 points, shooting 6 for 12 from behind the arc. Second-year guard Jordan Walsh got some playing time. He played pretty well defensively, and I hope to see more of him this year. Finally, rookie Baylor Shireman was 0 for 3 from the floor. The second and final Abu Dhabi game against the Nuggets is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Now, at this point in the history of the Celtics, the preseason is not very interesting. That being said, I am excited that it's officially started because, in my opinion, the road to Banner 19 starts here. Here's a story that's very interesting involving the Celtics. Jaylen Brown is on the cover of Time magazine this week. He has been named to their 100 Next list, and he is the first Celtic to be on the cover since Larry Bird was almost 40 years ago. Jaylen is on this list for his work off the court, including Boston Exchange, an initiative he founded meant to build wealth in underrepresented communities. Once again, Jaylen Brown is doing something really cool, and it's worth talking about. Last week it was a sneaker brand, this week it's being on the Time Next list. It's really cool and it makes me proud to be a Celtics fan. And now for the final Red Sox update of the season. The Red Sox lost their final series to the Tampa Bay Rays 2-1. They won the final game of the series and of the season. This means they finished third in the American League East Division with an 81-81 record. This record perfectly represents the season. Middle of the road and mediocre. So the bright spot is that our final record is kind of funny, in my opinion. Now, as for the playoffs, I am rooting for either the Royals because of my Missouri roots, or the LA Dodgers because of the historic nature of Shohei Ohtani's 50 home run and 50 stolen base season. Either of these teams winning, I think, would be cool. Otherwise, I really don't care about the playoffs, except that I hope the Yankees are eliminated at some point. I hope they do not win the World Series. I don't think they will, but I'll keep my fingers crossed on that. And now for the Boston Free Game of the Week. Once again, I chose a college football game. This week, it's the Missouri Tigers versus the Texas A&M Aggies. Now, as I've said before, the Missouri Tigers are my SEC East team, but I have not said before that I strongly dislike A&M. Now, this game is interesting because both teams are ranked. Missouri is number 9, A&M is number 25. This will be a big test for Missouri because, their first 2 wins were against no-name schools, Murray State and Buffalo. Who cares about them in the sense of college football? Then they played a close game against Boston College and a close game against Vanderbilt. Boston College was ranked at the time, but Mizzou was heavily favored. Vanderbilt is unranked, but Mizzou played a double overtime game against them, so this game against A&M, it really does mean a lot. They need to win, and it would be nice if it were a comfortable win to show that Missouri deserves its top 10 ranking. Now, Missouri quarterback Brady Cook will need to stay vigilant against a strong A&M defense, and Mizzou should expect A&M to have a big run game, as they have averaged 230 yards on the ground, which is number 13 in the FBS. Now, the good news for Missouri is they allow an average of 92 rushing yards per game from opposing backs. So for those reasons, I think it'll be a good one. I think it'll be an interesting game. I hope it's close, but maybe not as close as Missouri versus Vanderbilt. I do want a good game, but I want Missouri to win, and I want it to look good. So I will certainly be watching today at 11 a.m. on ESPN. Now for some primetime picks, the segment of the show where I pick who I believe will win each NFL primetime matchup. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge I was 3-1 last week. The one game I was wrong about was the Titans game. They indeed won. They lost quarterback Will Levis with an injury, and that may have actually helped them. I'm not sure, but they did win. I was wrong about that. So this week's primetime action starts with Sunday Night Football. It is the Steelers versus the Cowboys. I am going with Justin Fields and the Steelers. They seem to be on the up and up, while the Cowboys are struggling. I really don't care for either of these teams, but I would take Pittsburgh over Dallas any day of the week. Next up on Monday Night Football, the Chiefs play the Saints at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. I have to go with the Chiefs, even though they've had some close games and Patrick Mahomes has not looked as good this season, but the Chiefs keep pulling off wins. I'm going to go with them because they are the defending champions. That being said, I could see the Saints pulling off an upset, but I have to go with the Chiefs for my pick. Finally, Week 6 kicks off with the Seahawks versus the 49ers on Thursday Night Football. Now, I have to go with the 49ers after seeing what they did to the Patriots last week. Obviously, the Seahawks look better than New England, but the 49ers are a very well-coached team. They get a lot done even with injuries on the offense, so I have to go with them on Thursday night. And now, Assorted Awesome, the part of the show where I talk about something that is 100% awesome with no caveats. While being interviewed by the New York Post, Patriots legend and Super Bowl MVP Julian Edelman teased a new project that is very exciting to me and perhaps to you. He is currently developing a podcast with fellow Patriots legend Rob Gronkowski. Now, he did not give a lot of details on this, but he said it should be really fun, and the name is going to be really funny. So this is not really a big announcement. It's more of a teaser for what is to come, but I do love the idea of a Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski podcast. I love that these guys are friends to this day. I love that a lot of the former Patriots who won championships together remain friends, and I think this podcast could be really good. I love both of these guys. I think they're both really funny. I think they both are great with the media. Gronk and Edelman are on Fox Sports almost every Sunday, and having a podcast every week with them will be so great. Julian actually has a podcast called Games with Names, where they talk about historic games in all sports, but especially football. But I think this podcast will be a bit different. I think the vibe will be a little looser, a little more fun. So I hope I'm right. I hope this is a good podcast, and I hope many people appreciate the pairing of Julian and Rob. That is all I have for this episode of Sports Chowder. You can follow me on X at StebbensTweets. You can follow the show at sports_chowder. You can follow the show on Instagram at sportschowder and like it on Facebook. I really hope I have a Patriots win to celebrate in the next episode, but regardless, I will return next week with another heaping bowl of Sports Chowder, the show that discusses, celebrates, and/or laments the state of Boston sports. Have a great week.